For nearly a decade, Luke Nichols poured his life into building something rare and genuine on a platform overwhelmed by noise and chaos. What began as simple outdoor videos slowly grew into a beloved family experience that felt different from everything else online. Outdoor Boys wasn't just about camping or survival skills, it became a place where parents and children learned how to work together, how to trust one another, and how to find purpose far away from glowing screens. Viewers didn't just watch adventures, they felt like part of a family that represented freedom, simplicity, and togetherness in the wilderness. Then, without any warning, it all stopped. There was no public scandal, no online breakdown, no dramatic controversy. Instead, Luke vanished quietly. One short, 9-minute video appeared, offering a brief thank you, and then silence followed. Fans were left stunned and confused, desperately searching for explanations. Speculation spread rapidly. Theories multiplied. People wanted answers. What could have happened to Luke Nichols, the face and heart behind Outdoor Boys? Why would someone so deeply admired step away from the world he had carefully built? And what led him to briefly reappear 6 months later, not on his own channel, but during an Alaskan snowstorm on someone else's terms? This story goes far beyond YouTube drama. It's a revealing look behind the camera, exposing the sacrifices, pressures, and hidden costs of living life in front of millions of strangers who believe they are entitled to every moment. This isn't just a creator's journey, it's a cautionary tale about fame, family, and the emotional toll of walking away from everything you've created. It's the goodbye that shook the internet. On May 17, 2025, Luke Nichols uploaded a 9-minute video with a single-word title, "Goodbye." Within hours, millions of viewers realized something unsettling. They had been watching a man slowly fade away for nearly 18 months without fully understanding what was destroying him. Sitting calmly in front of the camera, Luke thanked his audience for over a decade of unwavering support. He explained that he was stepping away to protect his family. Fame, he said, had followed them home. Simple everyday moments were no longer private. Grocery shopping turned into public encounters. His 3 sons, Tommy, Nate, and Jacob, were recognized everywhere they went. Conversations that once centered on camping plans now included safety concerns that had never existed before. What started as sharing outdoor adventures had transformed into constant, uninvited surveillance of a family that never asked to be watched so closely. At the time of his farewell, Outdoor Boys had surpassed 15 million subscribers. Individual videos routinely reached tens of millions of views. Over 11 years, Luke had produced hundreds of videos, creating a massive archive that represented thousands of hours spent teaching survival skills and documenting family bonding in the wilderness. From a numbers perspective, nothing suggested failure. The channel was thriving. The metrics showed no collapse. And yet, something invisible had reached a breaking point, forcing a decision so final it ended everything overnight. Luke offered no dramatic explanations. He spoke briefly about focusing on his family, his faith, and himself, but provided no details. There were no sponsor shoutouts, no merchandise promotions, no fundraising links. The absence of anything promotional made the goodbye feel permanent and irreversible. The response was instant and overwhelming. Within 24 hours, the video surpassed 2 million views. More than 50,000 comments poured in before Luke ultimately disabled the comment section entirely. Families shared emotional stories about how Outdoor Boys had become part of their daily lives, playing in the background during dinner, shaping camping traditions, and offering something wholesome in a world that often felt overwhelming. Many struggled to understand why someone would walk away at the peak of success without an obvious disaster forcing the choice. But the disaster had been there all along. It had been unfolding in plain sight, frame by frame, for months. Luke had simply never spoken about it. For nearly 2 years, Luke Nichols had been slowly disappearing from his own channel. The evidence was subtle but undeniable. From 2022 through mid-2024, his on-camera appearances declined sharply. Some months showed less than half of the screen time he once had. His familiar direct-to-camera explanations became rare, almost vanishing entirely by early 2024. Videos often began with brief greetings before shifting into long stretches of silent footage or distant voiceovers that felt disconnected from the man viewers had followed for years. Physically, the change was just as noticeable. Side-by-side screenshots from different years showed a man visibly shrinking under pressure. Dark circles deepened under his eyes. His complexion grew paler. His speech slowed. His movements became heavier and more deliberate. Cuts on his hands appeared repeatedly without healing. Clothing looked worn again and again. The energy that once defined his teaching style faded into something mechanical, as if he were completing obligations rather than sharing passion. Frame-by-frame comparisons revealed undeniable deterioration. Videos from 2022 showed Luke handling equipment with speed and confidence. By early 2024, his movements were noticeably slower. In one February video, he paused mid-sentence for several seconds, something that never happened in earlier content. What troubled viewers most was his silence. Luke never mentioned illness. He never complained about exhaustion. He never explained the changes that millions had quietly noticed. The workload explained why the decline accelerated. For nearly a decade, Outdoor Boys operated without a professional crew. Luke planned expeditions alone. He filmed alone in extreme and dangerous environments. He carried heavy equipment through remote terrain by himself. He navigated wilderness that could easily be fatal, alone. Then he returned home to edit every video personally. There were no real breaks. Missing uploads risked algorithm penalties. Slowing down meant falling behind. At the same time, Luke maintained his legal career at Nichols Law in Fairfax, Virginia. Court records confirm he remained an active attorney through 2023 and 2024, handling traffic cases, DUI charges, and misdemeanor criminal defense. His days often began with court appearances, followed by hours of driving to filming locations, shooting until dark, editing late into the night, and returning to court the next morning. Law required sharp focus and strict deadlines. Content creation demanded physical stamina and emotional energy. Together, they formed a relentless cycle with no room for recovery. This wasn't normal fatigue, it was systematic breakdown, worsening month after month. But physical exhaustion was only half the crisis. The other half unfolded in public spaces Luke could no longer control. As Outdoor Boys grew past 15 million subscribers, the line between viewer and family completely disappeared. Tommy, Nate, and Jacob had appeared in hundreds of videos over the years, making them instantly recognizable. Photos of family encounters circulated online, shared by fans who didn't consider the consequences for children who never chose public life. The boys had no personal social media accounts. They never promoted themselves or asked for attention. Yet years of on-screen presence created a familiarity that followed them everywhere. Longtime viewers could recognize each child by voice alone. They knew their personalities, habits, and mannerisms from countless hours of footage. Strangers felt entitled to approach them anywhere, anytime. Online behavior confirmed how dangerous the boundary collapse had become. Forum discussions dissected the boys' personalities in unsettling detail. Some fans asked invasive questions about their schools, routines, and personal lives. Moderators were forced to enforce stricter privacy rules, but the damage was already done. As the channel grew, the boys' screen time increased. They shifted from background helpers to central figures carrying entire segments. By 2023, Tommy launched his own channel, Outdoor Tom, which gained over 1 million subscribers in just 9 months. The success was undeniable, but it forced Luke to confront a painful question. Were his sons truly choosing this life, or were they simply inheriting a role they never consciously agreed to play? What began as wholesome family bonding had evolved into something Luke could no longer justify. Financial security came at the cost of privacy, safety, and normal childhood development. Every successful upload pushed his family deeper into a spotlight they couldn't escape. Fame had become a cage, built from view counts and subscriber milestones. Luke finally understood that protecting his family meant destroying the very thing that made them successful. the machine that built outdoor boys was the same machine putting them at risk. Behind the scenes, a private crisis had been growing long before Luke ever said goodbye on camera. Though he never shared personal family conversations publicly, the pattern was clear. His wife, Rebecca, noticed the changes first. Wilderness trips that once recharged him now left him drained in ways sleep couldn't fix. He came home quieter, thinner, emotionally distant. Nights became fragmented, ruled by deadlines and anxiety, as the weight of performance followed him everywhere. Editing sessions routinely stretched far beyond 3 in the morning, not because Luke wanted them to, but because the schedule demanded it. What he once managed carefully, a balance between his legal background, his family life, and his content creation, had slowly collapsed. In its place was a relentless cycle of obligation with no room to rest, reset, or recover. The workload never paused, and neither did the pressure. The conversations about slowing down didn't begin with dramatic ultimatums or emotional breaking points. They started quietly. Rebecca suggested modest changes first, fewer uploads, less travel, simpler trips, maybe even hiring an editor to help carry the burden. Luke resisted those ideas, not out of arrogance or stubborn pride, but out of fear. He felt a deep responsibility toward his audience, as if he were bound by promises he believed he had made to millions of people who trusted him. The algorithm punished absence, and consistency had become a rule he was terrified to break. Every delay felt like failure. Every step backward felt permanent and irreversible. As the channel continued to grow, the pressure didn't spread outward, it folded inward. 15 million subscribers no longer felt like encouragement or support. Instead, it felt like constant judgment. Even without reading comments, Luke carried imagined reactions into every decision he made. A video that underperformed felt personal. A slight shift in metrics felt like silent disapproval. The audience no longer existed only on a screen, it lived in his head, constantly evaluating everything he did. That invisible weight followed him everywhere. Eventually, the strain reached the children. Tommy, Nate, and Jacob sensed that something had changed, even if they couldn't fully explain it. Trips that once felt spontaneous and playful became structured around camera angles, retakes, and forced enthusiasm. Their father was there, but he wasn't fully present. He was distracted, divided between the moment and the footage. Questions began to surface, questions Luke struggled to answer. Why did strangers recognize them? Why was everything filmed? When would life feel normal again? Luke had reached a point where success, no longer solved anything. His health was visibly declining. His family's privacy had vanished. His children were growing up inside a performance they never chose. The final decision didn't come from a single incident or dramatic collapse. It was the accumulated weight of years pressing down until it finally exceeded what he could carry. To understand why walking away was even possible, you have to understand who Luke Nichols really is, the man behind the camera. Born in 1978 in Anchorage, Alaska, Luke learned early that survival depended on knowing when to turn back. Even when the summit was visible, the wilderness taught him a hard truth: pushing past your limits doesn't make you strong, it makes you dead. Faith reinforced those instincts. His lifelong membership in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints shaped his priorities: family over career, service over attention, simplicity over excess. After serving a mission in Japan, attending law school at George Mason University, and co-founding a successful legal practice in Virginia, Luke had built what looked like the conventional American dream. But he had already walked away from that dream once before. In 2015, he left the security of law to pursue YouTube full-time, risking everything on a platform that offered no guarantees. Now, a decade later, he faced the same choice, but in reverse. He could walk away from a channel he had built into an empire, or he could watch it slowly destroy the family he had built it for. The Alaskan wilderness had taught him how to survive extreme conditions. His faith would teach him what was worth surviving for. In May 2025, Luke chose to walk away from everything he had spent 10 years building in order to protect what mattered more. He chose to give his wife peace instead of constant worry. He chose to give his sons a childhood that wasn't shaped by strangers watching their every move. Walking away meant losing a decade of work. Staying meant losing his health and his children's privacy. He chose the loss he believed he could survive. What followed was unexpected. For 3 months after his goodbye, the Outdoor Boys channel remained frozen at 15 million subscribers. There were no new uploads, no community posts, no signs of life. Fans gradually accepted that the channel was truly over. Then, without warning, Luke uploaded 3 final videos: remote survival trips, family river adventures, and off-grid builds. There was no announcement, no thumbnails hinting at a return, no acknowledgement that he was even aware the channel still existed. Views surged into the millions within days, proving the audience was still deeply loyal despite months of silence. But Luke never engaged with the response. Comments remained disabled. No follow-up videos appeared. The 3 uploads stood alone, quiet proof that he had kept his word. Then the silence returned, deeper than before. Life shifted for the Nichols family in ways the camera had never allowed. Rebecca moved through daily routines without calculating whether someone might be filming. Tommy, Nate, and Jacob explored interests beyond wilderness skills, discovering who they were when they weren't performing for millions. Luke experienced what he called phantom camera syndrome, catching himself instinctively reaching for equipment he had intentionally left behind. Over time, that reflex faded. The peace lasted for months. The balance felt sustainable. The decision seemed final. Then, in November, a phone call arrived that changed everything. Earlier in the year, Luke's close friend Stephen Smith's wife, Celesta, had been diagnosed with thyroid cancer. Surgery in April briefly offered hope, but follow-up tests revealed something far worse: ductal carcinoma, triple-negative breast cancer, one of the most aggressive forms. The cancer had spread to her lymph nodes. With 4 young children and months of chemotherapy ahead, Stephen stepped away from content creation just as his family needed income most desperately. Luke understood the reality immediately. 6 months earlier, he had walked away from his own channel to protect his wife and sons from the crushing pressure of online fame. Returning to the wilderness meant reopening a door he had barely escaped. But this time, the risk wasn't about views or relevance. It was about survival. On November 15, 2025, Luke Nichols appeared in an Alaskan snowstorm on Stephen's channel, My Life Outdoors. There was no announcement and no fanfare, just a lone figure battling whiteout conditions, building a lean-to against a fallen birch, chopping firewood until darkness swallowed the forest, and cooking moose stew over an open fire as snow buried the campsite. He moved quickly, joked through the cold, and explained gear choices in Stephen's style, not his own. This wasn't a comeback. It was a transfer of lifeline. Every dollar from the video went directly to Stephen's family. Within days, the video reached millions of views, pushed Stephen's channel past 1 million subscribers, and delivered real financial relief at the exact moment it was needed. Today, the cameras are off. The comment sections remain silent. The subscriber count sits frozen, a monument to a chapter the world assumed had ended. But Luke Nichols' story didn't end when the videos stopped. It simply moved into a space the world can't see. A place where influence isn't measured by views or likes, and legacy isn't dictated by algorithms or viral trends. Quiet conversations, unseen guidance, and decisions made far from the spotlight are shaping lives in ways no online audience could ever capture. It leaves behind a question that lingers long after the screen goes dark. How much real impact happens where no one is watching? How many stories are being written in silence, far beyond applause or recognition, where choices are guided not by popularity but by principle? Luke's journey reminds us that true legacy isn't built under the glare of cameras. It's built in the decisions we make when no one is paying attention, in the sacrifices we accept for what truly matters, and in the quiet work that sends ripples across generations. And as the world continues chasing the next viral moment, it's worth wondering what lessons are waiting in the spaces we rarely see. The story isn't over. It's just moving where the cameras can't follow. And its next chapter may change everything we think we know about influence, purpose, and the cost of choosing what truly matters.